Now I get to explain Transcendentalism, which is a big long word that hopefully by the end of this you'll know what it means. It really comes from European Romanticism. And Transcendentalism is concerned with the notion, the conflict between what was called at the time reason and what the Transcendentalist would say is understanding. They would say that reason was the ability to comprehend beauty and truth, instinct and emotion. Your ability to kind of get the world versus understanding was trying to grasp the world to the application of intellect. Today we may talk about your feelings versus kind of your knowledge and what you know or your logic. Transcendentalists preach the cultivation of reason to liberate us from understanding. So if you remember, we had the Enlightenment, which had this real focus on logic and science to answer our questions and solve our problems. This is a reaction against that. These are people who are saying that gathering data and studying things is not the way to make the world a better place, but rather to appreciate the world. And so you're in that struggle that we've already talked about between enlightenment and religion. The idea is that you would transcend the limitations of your intellect and allow your emotions to create what Emerson here would call an original relation to the universe for every soul. It was not a particularly religious movement, although these people did tend to believe in God. And you can think of it as kind of religion without the religion. It comes out of Concord, Massachusetts, particularly the writings of Ralph Waldo Emerson, a Unitarian minister and teacher who left the church in 1832 to become a writer and a lecturer. He also continued to teach throughout his life. He believed that the path to salvation was not through the church, but through nature. And in fact, his first really important work was called Nature, from 1836. In this he says, "In the woods we return to reason and faith, standing on the bare ground, my head bathed by the blithe air, and uplifted into infinite space, all mean egotism vanishes. I am part and particle of God." Now, this is an idea that we see all the time in, say, Disney movies, where if you want to find yourself, if you want to find truth, you go out into nature, you go out into the woods or onto the beach or something. This was a fairly new idea at the time, and it didn't make sense before this because everybody pretty much lived in nature. Everybody was a farmer. But when the Industrial Revolution comes along, there is this yearning for the old way, for the natural world. Emerson's most important disciple, in fact, as important as Emerson, maybe even more important. Are there any great quotes here? I do like, "The louder he talked of his honor, the faster we counted our spoons." If you don't get that, ask me later. "Whoso would be a man must be a nonconformist," probably his most famous quote. The idea that you need to reject the rules of society. Again, every teen movie you'll ever see embraces that notion. So here's Thoreau. Thoreau graduated from Harvard and became a teacher. He would write, "Most men lead lives of quiet desperation." He did not want to do that. He believed that society pressures us to conform, and in order to be a true man, you must follow your own instincts. Anytime you're watching a TV show or a movie or listening to a song and it tells you to follow your heart, that's a transcendentalist notion. Thoreau was a minimalist. It's kind of funny. I mean, it's easy to say he rejected material things, but it's also true that his rich friends provided him with land to live on, for example, and meals. He would live on Walden Pond, which was really just his dad's backyard. Today we have this idea that Walden Pond was somewhere way out in the middle of nowhere and he was completely isolated. That's not true. In fact, there was a train that ran through the land that he lived on. It was not isolated. And it was about a 10-minute walk from town, which he would go into on a regular basis. In fact, he had dinner with Emerson, I believe it is, on every Sunday night, I think. But he lived there for 2 years, trying to reject materialism in this little cabin that you see there. And he eventually decided that government was an unnecessary constraint. And he will write famously, "That government is best which governs least," and create a doctrine that he calls civil disobedience. This is the refusal to follow laws that you believe to be immoral. And he does this, protesting the Mexican-American War. He'll refuse to pay his taxes, saying he doesn't want to fund a war that he believes is morally wrong. He thought the war was being fought to expand slavery. And he'll get arrested for this, but one of his wealthy friends, possibly Emerson, will bail him out of jail after he spends a very short period of time in jail. My favorite thing about Henry David Thoreau, though, is what another great transcendentalist, a woman, Louisa May Alcott, the author of Little Women, would say about Thoreau, referring to his neck beard there. She says, "His neck beard will most assuredly deflect amorous advances and preserve the man's virtue in perpetuity." We don't often think about these great writers making fun of each other's appearance, but there's Alcott doing it. Okay. We also should discuss Oliver Wendell Holmes, the great essayist. He will write. He will become a representative, along with Thoreau and Emerson, of this defense of nature for nature's sake. There is no notion that we need nature like today. We think of ecology and global warming or any of that stuff. There is no discussion of that. It is simply that nature is something to be appreciated and enjoyed, and therefore should be preserved. So Holmes will write, "The mountains and cataracts which were to have made poets and painters have been mined for anthracite and damned for water power." The Transcendentalists saw God, saw religion in nature. And because of this, they became the first environmentalists. As we become an industrial nation, as we begin things like large-scale manufacturing, large-scale mining, large-scale harvesting of resources, these are the first people to say, wait a minute, we're destroying the beauty of the natural world. While most of America saw nature as something to be exploited for profit, the Transcendentalists saw it as something to be protected. This is a completely spiritual mindset. This is not scientific. There's no sense of endangered species or anything like that. This is simply nature is beautiful, nature is worth preserving. I should point out as well, you might pause and read this poem. If you're in my class, we're going to look at this poem in class. But this is a great poem by Emily Dickinson, which does a really nice job expressing this idea. Emily Dickinson, kind of at the tail end of this movement, but I think clearly part of this movement. A great poet and shut-in, who, again, we'll discuss in class. All right.